Cents Per Mile, featuring Charles Gracie, Paul Gibson, and Josh Haynes. Everyone knows the trucking industry has issues, but most people are afraid to talk about it.
Someone's got to do it.
With loads of recruiting and marketing experience and backed by the largest driver audience in the world, we deliver carriers the driver perspective, find solutions, and help make sense make sense.
Thank you for tuning in to Cents Per Mile. I'm your host, Charles Gracie.
And I'm your co-host, Paul Gibson.
Hey, I'm Josh Haynes. Charles, Paul, what are we talking about on today's episode of Cents Per Mile?
We're talking about the aging population, the driver population.
Yep, a lot of people want to talk about Gen Z and millennials, which, I mean, we've even done before, but at the same time, it's kind of important to actually focus on that aging driver population since they are the majority of your drivers. That being said, normal stuff, if you could like, rate, subscribe the podcast wherever you listen to it. We're also on Spotify, iHeartRadio, basically anywhere you get your podcasts. So yeah, if you could give us a rating or a subscribe, then we will get pushed further out.
And you can also go to centspermilepodcast.com where you can submit to be a guest for a topic or to even become a sponsor.
Sponsor? Who's our sponsor today, Charles?
We have Hello Retention. You know, they're working really hard to connect carriers with the driver's feedback so they can focus on that thing that we talk about a lot, keeping them.
Also, there's probably the biggest party in freight coming up. It's the Future of Freight Festival from FreightWaves. That's some alliteration. But if you look in the description, there's a link that you can click, and because we're awesome, you can actually get a pretty steep discount if you sign up through that link because you're friends with us. That being said, it is time for the news. All right, so it's time for 10-2 News, where we go over any cool or awesome stories that we found on CDLLife from the past couple weeks, and we talk about them. So, what? This first article, I'll just start with the headline. This is absurd. So the headline is co-driver left with critical wounds after in-cab machete fight. So this guy is in the truck and his co-driver, I don't know what transpired between the two. It doesn't say, but his co-driver attacked him with a machete.
Bloodsport, the trucking edition.
I guess, man. Oh, that's absurd. I don't know. I guess, Charles, you never really did team, so you can't tell me how bad it is.
No, I did. I did team, and I liked my teammate. And who has a machete laying around the cab?
That's fair.
There's so many questions on this.
But did you ever have a moment that if you did have a machete?
Yes. Yeah, so me and my teammate ran this game where we always found the most absurd place to park to switch, and it had two rules: had to have coffee and had to have the bathroom. And one day I woke up in the middle of the desert with crows the size of chickens and a porta potty, and he had bought a cup of coffee that looked like motor oil.
All right, so the next story is actually about as absurd, but not as violent. So did you know that semi-truck wrestling is a thing?
It's semi-sumo wrestling.
Well, that's fair. But yeah, so basically two trucks actually come up nose to nose, and then they essentially both floor it and then try to push the other truck out of the ring. I think we have a video.
Yeah, so here it was Volvo Sleeper versus Volvo Day Cab, and we saw the Sleeper wound up winning in the long run. But it was pretty fun to watch. I think we should do more of this.
I do too. But you know what else I think we should do more of? Behind the Wheel. All right, so it's time for Behind the Wheel. So being partnered with CDLLife, having the largest driver audience in the world, we can actually pose questions and ask real drivers and get real opinions about real issues. But today is a little bit different, you know, because it's more about stats. So we're looking at the age of truck drivers versus the general labor force in America. So a good example where it really peaks is between the age of 56 and 60. So the general labor force, about 11.1% of those people are between 56 and 60. As far as truck drivers go, it's a full 16%. So if you look at the labor force, and we'll pop this up on screen, it's pretty even compared to even just CDL holders in general. But then when you go over to actual just truck drivers, it looks like a roller coaster. It goes up, it peaks, and then it goes down pretty fast. I'm imagining, and we'll talk about it later, once you get past 60, at that point, then you start to running into insurance companies, which want higher premiums and that kind of thing. But that just points out today why we're talking about the aging driver population is because that is the bulk of your drivers. And we need to figure out what can keep them there until we can consider younger generations to stick or like join the industry.
Yeah, it's one of those topics that we cover a lot about retaining your drivers, introducing trucking to people at an earlier age. And this chart shows and reinforces the importance of that. And that's kind of where we're going with today's topic.
Yep. All right. Well, that being said, it is time to go behind the desk with Tenstreet.
So for Behind the Desk with Tenstreet, we got Justin Walters with us today. Hey, Justin.
Hey guys. Hey Charles. How are you guys doing? Just jumping right into it. So, what's really cool is we have over 3 million drivers in the Impulse today. So what that does is it gives us this ability, just amazing ability to generate some incredible data on age demographics, right? The topic of today. That can further enhance just our overall understanding of the driver pool today. So just some quick stats here. So 36% of Pulse users are between the ages of 41 and 55, with 16% of those Pulse users being over 55. So the aging population is high, and what we are finding with these stats is that it is steadily increasing each quarter. So kind of a red flag there. But some positive notes here is that the number of drivers joining the industry is also growing between the ages of 31 to 40 based on the Pulse data. So again, I build it up with some negative, go into positive, and now I'm back into that negative a little bit here and saying that even though those numbers are encouraging, it's not keeping up with the number of drivers that are aging out, which is obviously a big thing too. So just on average, even just a little bit of a tidbit here, because I think it's just interesting, is that women are also younger than men based on the Pulse data as well. So really, what does this tell us? Well, the drivers in these age groups, as far as kind of specific to the 31 to 40, we have another 20 plus years, give or take, of service ahead of them, right? Which is why we feel it's really important to understand really what makes those and that demographic tick, right? And just understanding that part of it. So really, it's the trends in these employees, and as far as why do they choose to stay and why do they choose to leave your company, is really just getting down into the meat of it. So that's just some really quick demographic information.
Justin, that's some good stuff. Where can people find out more?
Yeah, so just reach out to me on LinkedIn, send me a direct message, or just friend me, anything like that. You can also shoot me an email, justin.walters@tenstreet.com.
At Hello Retention, we excel in building a stronger workforce for your logistics and trucking company. Our retention insight solutions keep your top talent engaged and committed. Through deep analysis and actionable insights, we help you understand and reduce employee loss, ensuring workforce stability. Hello Retention, your partner in workforce excellence. What will your workforce look like in 12 months? Visit helloretention.com or call 888-400-1722 to learn more and start transforming your workforce today.
All right, so it's time to make sense, where we start to talk about our main topic a little bit more in depth. So like we said previously, we're talking about the aging driver population, and it's one of those things where it becomes such an issue Because like in Behind the Wheel, we talked about how it's a roller coaster and then it dips off really hard around the 60s. So when the bulkier drivers are in that position, can you fill that? How do you fill it to keep that pipeline going that way if you can't fix it and load it with younger people? What are we gonna do when all of the boomers get out of trucks?
Some things age better than others. I mean, Paul, you're aging. It's your birthday today when this is happening. So happy birthday, my guy. You're not aging so well. But as far as the driver corps goes, they gain experience. They're seasoned, and now you have insurance companies choking carriers out saying you can't hire these folks, even though we have physicals in place that determine whether they're physically able to do the job or not. So I think at a certain level, we have to have that conversation with the, insurance companies dictating this, even though there's layers in place to protect them and the companies.
Well, I would say I look good for 45.
I mean, perception's reality.
I mean, I turned 37 today, but I look good for 45. So anyway, the other interesting thing though that I kind of see with this is a lot of those people in that age range right now, while that graph looks like a roller coaster, have been through a roller coaster. Because most of those people went from, the way that it used to be, kind of like, I guess that would put them back in, like the 90s and whatnot. But at the same time, like they've been around since e-logs started. They've been around since they started really putting governors on trucks.
I've been along since e-log started, sir. I started out on paper logs, and I'm only 39.
Right, but that's what we're talking about. We're talking about people between the age of 40 and 60.
39 is not 40.
Okay, well, but either way, it was close to it. And so that's kind of the idea, is that like their experience from when they started only went up, but they were kind of put in a position to where that became their career. These younger people are coming in and may not like those things, but that's their starting point.
Well, us younger folks are coming in, and we're trying to introduce, ourselves to the experience of the older folks. And I saw that funny look you made when I said us younger folks. I'm still considered younger. Perception's reality. Don't mess with my perception or reality. But speaking of, perceptions on this, our guest has some perception on this and tons of experience to share.
That's true. And the age to fit the conversation. What's up, Mike?
Yeah. 2 million miles, 20 years behind the wheel, 20 years in the office. So yeah, I guess I am old.
It's seasoned. It's well seasoned, like a cast iron skillet.
Exactly. And, guys, we are seeing a silver tsunami, which I'm part of. A lot of us that are, the boomers and X generation are dying off and retiring at 3,000 to 8,000 a week. So that's a lot of people leaving, but there's a lot of people coming in. 13.6 million CDLs, that's Class B of 10 million and 3 million Class A. Some of the guys my age are going to school bus driving, going to dump trucks, doing stuff a little closer to home. They paid their dues. So it's really exciting. And, as many years coming from a driver to an owner to an executive vice president, it's been a hell of a ride. Trucking's taught me a lot. Really grateful for where I am in life, and it's all because of trucking. So to the young people out there, it's still a wonderful way to make a living and support your family.
Yeah, what you said is interesting too. Just to interject a little bit, is when I was going through all that FMCSA information to find out, the age versus the general labor force, the age of bus drivers peaks significantly after truck drivers.
Yeah, we're not politically correct at this age, so yeah, those kids are going to get off the bus with hurt feelings. Yeah, right. But it's a thing. It gives a guy that's run over the road and maybe is tired of it to stay in the industry and do something else with their CDL. There's a lot of jobs in metro areas. Garbage truck driver. Those are 4-axle with the boom and the lift. Those are really good retirement positions, because let's say someone's, ready to get off the road and tired of over the road, but still wants to stay active doing something. And, Walmart wouldn't take me, paper or plastic. So doing something else.
Yeah, I feel like I got to put a disclaimer out there because we get drivers that watch this. And if you're a new CDL holder, when we're talking about experienced drivers, we're not talking about you just made it through CDL school and you're ready to get off the road. Like, you got to put in your dues. You got to work, drive over the road, get your experience. And then one day you can haul around a bus full of kids or a box full of garbage.
It's anything you do in life, any job you work at, people came in my office all the time as a intern and wanted my job. Okay, you can certainly get there, but you got to pay your dues. And I think too often people are trying to shortcut the system. And with the CDL, I mean, you never stop learning, you never stop growing, you never stop training. New technologies. I mean, look at how the trucks have changed. I started out in a 1972 cab over Peterbilt with 2x70 air conditioning. I mean, today they've come a long way.
But with that though, obviously these younger people getting into trucking, with the state of things and because of a lot of that safety technology and things that they can rely on now, do you think that these younger people, once they get to that age, are going to actually have developed the same experience due to having a lot more things that can kind of do parts of the job for them?
One of the things we really need to have a real conversation in this industry about pay. The cents per mile worked great in the 70s and 80s. It doesn't work today with
It's still working great.
Well, your radio show, yes, but the pay as the cents per mile for drivers doesn't work well. It needs to be an hourly or a day rate or, per job rate, something like that. There's just too much when it's $2.31 a mile to break even right now, and they're trying to sell freight at $1.90 a mile. Why, yeah, I'll pay 20 cents a mile to haul your freight. Yes, sir. Let me have two of those. It doesn't make sense. And we need to start having some conversations about pay and how we bring in that next generation. Because in my day, 2 and 3 logbooks, 20 cents a mile, that's how I made a living. You can't do that now. And you shouldn't, nor should have we. There's reasons for those things. But when we can start having the real conversations around cents per mile, no pun on your show, but on the real, what drives this industry, because everybody works for pay. You got to support your family. And even at 60, 65 cents a mile, when you're only getting 2,200 miles a week, $1,200, $1,300, you take out taxes, road expenses, everything else, they're bringing home $600, $700 a week. I don't know about you, but it's kind of hard to live on nowadays. With 5 guys the other day was $38.
I mean, it is one of those things that's very important that we talk about. And that's what the whole purpose of today's show is. If someone wanted to get a hold of you, maybe grab a discount at Denny's on Tuesday, how would they get a hold of you?
SL Resources, email, you can put it up. People could shoot me an email there. I'm, like I said, semi-retired, so catch me at the beach.
It's the shirt.
All right, Mike, one last question we always ask our first guests. Me or Charles, who's your favorite?
Josh.
See, there it is. Mike knows. With that being said, we need to pay some bills.
Hot Seat Services has Rent-A-Recruiter.
Wait!
Hey Michael, have you heard that Hot Seat Services Rent-A-Recruiter service will place their staff in your organization similar to a temporary hire model?
No way, what else does it do?
Follow me, I have to tell everyone. They take leads in existing databases to put new hires into your business's trucks.
Well, shiver me timbers! What else?
Come on! Their model is more cost efficient because their recruiters are trained and can get your pipeline flowing easier and faster.
No way. Anything else?
No matter how many hires they make, it's a set cost per week, so the more they get, the better their client's cost per hire gets.
Holy sh**.
For more information and to find out for yourself, go to hotseatservices.com.
All right, we're back. And Paul, I mean, we got a little bit of time before we get to our next guest, but that was some great takeaways from Coble.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that really is, ultimately part of the reason why I really wanted to do this episode as well, is that idea of, our younger drivers, even if we do find a way to bring people in at younger ages or, to replenish the aging out driver demographic, which I loved that Mike called it a silver wave. I like that. But yeah, like even if we do, with the way that the job is set up now, are those people going to have the same level of experience? And that's kind of worrying to me. But it's also like when you were a kid, being as old as we are, and the teachers always told you to show me too, always told us to show our work, because when we grow up, there's not going to be a calculator in our pocket.
I show my work every day. You see the wrinkles and stress wrinkles in my forehead and face. Like, man, trucking shows your work. Just look at someone's face.
Right, but I'm saying they always told me that there wouldn't be a calculator in my pocket, is what they always said to me. That's why I had to like write out all the equations.
I've seen you do math. You might want to carry one of those around.
I have one on my phone because I didn't bother with it.
It is interesting though, and I mean, to a lot of concerned drivers' points, is we've often concerned ourselves with the puppy mill, how fast these new drivers are being trained, how fast they're being pumped out and put on their own with limited experience. And eventually these drivers are going to be in the position of our aging out drivers. And then they have to teach and train the newer ones. So if we're sacrificing quality at any point, it's just a domino and snowball effect where it's just going to keep getting worse. And I think that's where we really have to put our focus, is reinforcing the youth coming in, not just attracting them, but reinforcing them for success. Because there is going to be a time period, I won't be here to enjoy it, but there's going to be a time period where those drivers are now leading the way for the new ones coming in. And again, I just want to emphasize, I won't be here for it. So please fix this. I want to get my refrigerator on time. I want to get my dishwasher. And it's crazy as is. So, I mean, I really do think we need to put some focus on that.
So I'd like to ask our next guest, Dwight, how do you feel about that? Do you think the term that you hear all the time in recruiting and whatnot is experienced drivers? Do you think experienced drivers will mean the same thing in 20 years?
Well, I definitely do not think that's going to be the case. And you actually kind of set me up for a real immediate answer to that when you showed your phone and said you didn't think there was going to be a calculator in your pocket. Unfortunately, this is the one thing that everyone has now, and it's one of the smartest things in the world. And when people can go out there in the market and they can pull instant data, you can see that 50%, 57% of drivers are over the age of 45, 23% over 55. What does that tell you right there? It means that there's a very low margin of younger drivers in the market. When they can go, say, to Cloud Trucks and pull data that it was 940 billion of freight revenue in 2022 and 3.5 million truck drivers, and 32% of that went to driver wages, that it doesn't add up. The math ain't mathing. And when you got one of the top 25 carriers posting on their website, average salary $75K a year for a driver, I mean, take away taxes, there's 30% of that. I mean, the bottom line is, if you're going to entice people, especially the next generation with access to smartphones, all the data in the world, Chat GPT, whatever, do they want to spend their life on the road and struggle and be financially in a position where they don't know if they'll even be able to survive? Everything is going up across the board. Truck maintenance is going up across the board. Just like some of the other commentators said, I mean, for the last 2.5 years, drivers have been operating at either under or break-even margins. I mean, it's not sustainable to stay that way.
It's not. And I mean, you, to your point, drivers' wages is a top topic. And you got these drivers that are trying to make a living, and we're trying to attract drivers, but it's just not. 2 and 2 is not equal in 4. And then you got executives that have failed, companies that have collapsed 2 times, and they're winding up in another executive role. I mean, at some point we have to turn around and we have to say, okay, what can we do to make this better? If we can make this side work, then why can't we fix this side? Because in order to have these executives, in order to have these companies, in order to support the growth, not only as a nation, but as individual companies, we have to figure out the most basic thing, which is how do we get drivers and keep them?
Absolutely. And that's what you said, some of these big companies selling everything. I mean, I was having that conversation last week with some people, and it's like, the age old saying, they're too big to fail. Well, if you were failing before you sold, or you were failing before a merger, maybe you are not too big to fail. Maybe you need to fail so it opens up a space for other people to come in and do it the right way. We've kind of gotten the habit of doing things in this country that people just continue these businesses or these practices because they were done that way. Well, maybe it's time to walk away from that. Let's change the way it's done. Let's open up new opportunities. Let's open up the discussion to, how do we get these drivers to stay on the road? How do we reduce fuel costs for everyone overall? Because look at the owner ops. They're paying consumer fuel prices. They're paying, okay, maybe they got a fuel card, but they're definitely not getting the same fuel costs as the top 25 outfits in the country. So it's hurting those guys even worse. And what if they got kids and families and everything else at home, or a car payment and house payment? They're on the road 300 plus days a year. What do we do about that?
Yeah, with that though, because the temperature, and like your feelings about it, I feel like we're pretty on the same page. So I'm a millennial, and with that, I've experienced so many once in a lifetime events. There was 2008. There were several things, and then like there was COVID, for instance. The cost, like you were talking about, of trucking, within the inflation at record highs. With every one of those, we lose more and more experienced older drivers. But I keep getting told that these are once in a lifetime events, but they keep happening and happening. Obviously you can't predict the future, but do you feel like that's going to stop, and how big of a role do you think that plays?
Well, I think it plays a huge role because, how are you going to entice a bunch of people to enter an industry in a job market where there's continual challenges coming that are far greater than any other job they may encounter in their life? You could say, you can go be, work in the office for $35,000-$40,000 a year and have a rudimentary job that you sit there every day and get paid to do the same thing. Or, hey, go be a truck driver and jump over these 19 hurdles and you'll make $75,000 a year. But by the way, you're going to lose 30-40% in taxes. And anything you eat on the road or buy on the road, by the way, you can't write it off because you're a company driver and you're W-2. So you can't get a tax write-off on that. So at the end, you're going to make about the same amount of money if you sat in that desk in the air conditioning all day.
Yeah, and the whole thing there is it gets even deeper. You got 1099s out there that are company drivers for all intents and purposes, but they have no expenses, so they have no write-offs, and then you're just getting the tax man hitting them over the head every year. Some of the I really think that if we're going to dive into this and dissect this and find a recipe for success, we have to look at the whole thing. We can't just isolate one thing and then put all of our focus there, because by the time we do it, it's been corrupted or perverted in another part of the process. We have to take this from the top to the bottom and just set it down and rebuild this thing for success, because otherwise the entire industry is at jeopardy.
Absolutely. That's my feelings on it, because if we don't find a way to fix the issue and do it very, very, very quickly, the market statistics are showing that a quarter of the drivers are going to be gone the next decade. 1/4 of the drivers on the road. Well, right now there's already markets. I see it every day. There's already markets where there's more loads than trucks. You lose a quarter of the drivers, it's going to be an all-out free-for-all as far as rates, stability in the market, getting anything moved. It's a recipe for disaster.
I'm going to ask you a question. If you had to replace 3 things that's going to make trucking a better place for tomorrow's drivers, what would they be?
3 things to replace for drivers. Well, I would say that we definitely need to take a secondary look at the ELDs and the way they're managed, the way the time frames work on them, because shipping, loading, unloading, that all plays into it. I think the second thing, a huge thing, is there needs to be somebody in the market that steps in and levels the playing field as far as fuel cost. There definitely needs to be another option there, especially for owner ops and people of that nature. And then the third thing I would say to change the market, really a big thing, and it's been discussed a lot, is there needs to be some clarification around the difference between dispatchers and brokers, and that should have well been defined by now, and what's legal and what's not legal.
There is a clarification between them. One takes more of your money than the other. One takes more of your money than the other. I want to add in there predatory insurance. I mean, insurance companies are choking the life out of these carriers and owner operators. It's brutal out there, and it's the difference between making it or breaking it nowadays.
Oh, I 100% agree, and I think that's something that needs to be dealt with nationwide, and not just in the trucking industry. The insurance market needs to be addressed as a whole.
So, if someone wanted to get a hold of you, Dwight, how would they find you?
We've got our website. It's homelandlogistics.com. They can find me on LinkedIn. My name is Dwight Young. I'm on there as well. Or you can hit me up in the email, dwight@homelandlogistics.com.
All right. Well, thanks for coming on Cents Per Mile, my guy.
Hey, thanks you. I appreciate you guys.
All right. Well, I am old now because it's my birthday.
Old now? Really? We're drawing the line, and now you're old?
Well, this episode got pretty intense, so I'm pretty tired, and I'm going to go take a nap.
Like all good things that come to an end, thank you for tuning in to Cents Per Mile. I'm your host, Charles Gracie.
And I'm your co-host, Paul Gibson. See you next time.
And I'm your favorite,